Lost names, saved memories. Hopefully. Today on episode 330 of Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland. Right here through Portal 47, through Trekland Treks. Yes, for some sanity, clarity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. Got a great topic for you today. I've got news for you today. We've got breaking news that's just been happening. In fact, it's crazy. I came up with this topic yesterday, and then lo and behold, I wake up this morning and something in the news just reinforces what I was thinking. So that doesn't always happen. But first, I've got some even more breaking news. I think you've heard that it's coming up on our annual open house in Portal 47. Portal 47 is your backstage pass to more in-depth Trek. Portal 47 is my backstage package. We've got a lot of portales here. We're coming up on the 8th anniversary of Portal 47. We were Zooming before it was cool, before pandemic time, and communicating and sharing so much from Backstage Trek and the people that made it that you never hear from. Because Portal 47 is for all the folks who have no idea how much Star Trek they still have no idea about. And I don't mean trivia kings. I mean the stuff that makes it worthwhile watching. You know, when you've been around the block 4 or 5 or 6 or 47 times, hopefully you're hearing from the folks and the insights that keep making Star Trek even fresher. The reason it's been around for 60 years. And the news today is every year we have an open house that's free to the public. We have a great guest. We kind of sample. I kind of show off how the portal works. We have a mini Ask Dr. Trek roundtable. Then we have a great guest who's a headliner guest. This year, I've been teasing this. Now we moved to Wednesday, November 15th. So in 2 weeks, I can now let you know that our guest this year is the great Nick Meyer. Yes, Nick Meyer, not only amazing for all the 80s revolution and yes, saviorizing of Star Trek, but also involved with Discovery at the beginning in that crazy time, and still sitting out there with a script for a 3-part miniseries on Khan's Decade in Exile, which at last report is to be an audio drama. What's up with that? So whatever he's at liberty to talk about, we will talk about that. And of course, it's open to everybody's questions submitted in advance or in the chat. It's an amazing night. It's all there. And we'll be giving away door prizes. I'll have books and DVDs, maybe something else. But you've got to register, and you can, it's very easy. Just let me know you're coming by just checking in at, there we go. Go to LarryNemecek.com/openhouse23. Now, this is so breaking that I haven't had time to change the graphics over, but the form is all good. But Nick is going to be our guest, Nick Meyer. He is still out there blowing, still writing his Sherlock Holmes book series. He's got a new one coming out, the 13th, maybe? The 13th book. Anyway, great guy. And I think he's actually warmed up to his Star Trek heritage more in the last 5-10 years than he ever did over the years. So go to right now to openhouse/openhouse23 at my site. You can sign up. You'll be there for information about the Zoom link, obviously, but about how to submit questions. And most of all, you will be in the drawing that we will do at least 3 or 4 times during the evening. Okay. So I wanted to get that out here. You all are hearing it before anybody else is. I'm so thrilled to finally, Nick has been somebody in my mind for the last few years. And when we've had the likes of Mike McMahon and Renee Echevarria and David Livingston and Mike Westmore and David Carson, director, and I'm leaving people out. And yes, Bob Butler, who directed The Cage, was my very first open house guest. And then we had him live. His son helped get him down to Comic-Con San Diego live. So we've got a wonderful history of our open house guests. The portal is awesome too. And I know we've got portales here in the, portales from around the world who are here. That's all exciting. What's one of those little stories that starts out small? And here's today's topic. Starts out small and then kind of builds. So I don't know how much you were hanging out online over the weekend. Happy November, by the way, everybody. Hope you had a good Halloween. I don't know how much you were hanging out online, because there was this slow bubble that was happening in a good way, And I still don't know all my theories about where this started. People say, I don't know, I'm just passing the signal on. I'm just boosting it. I don't know. But everybody from random people pinging me, dragging me into Facebook and Instagram and Twitter threads, X. And then I get DM from our good friend Dayton Ward, of course, the author and the current consultant for the franchise for much of it. And he gets to talk about it in public now. Years ago, it was just a thing. We didn't make a big deal out of it. No, there's this ongoing bubble. Everybody from Dayton on down has asked me this. There's apparently a big hunt out for the identity of this guy, right? Obviously, you can see he's one of the drill thralls. He was in some of the opening scenes. African-American, extra, obviously had no lines. And people are trying to figure out who he is. He turned up in a couple of other original series episodes, too. He was in the Mirror Universe, and he actually had a Prime Universe shot, too. And it's funny because people are trying to track who he is. Not unlike people for years tried to track or falsely thought they had the information on who was human Isis in Assignment Earth original series, right? The woman in the cat suit, who was apparently Isis the cat shape-shifting, which was a totally bonkers little side tangent to what could have been Assignment Earth. I still think that the BBC doesn't really have a case against Desilu Paramount for copyright infringement off of copying Doctor Who and his companions. I think there was so little mix back in the day in 1968 that it wasn't a thing. But the show was not picked up from the backdoor pilot. We have always, if you're a first-time Star Trek fan, the first time you go to the series, you go, why are Kirk and Spock in this so little? Well, it was the backdoor pilot. Very famously done. Hey, we've got episodes on this on the Trek Files, as have other people. But nobody knew her identity. Then it was wrongly attributed for years and years and years that human Isis was Victoria Vetri, who was a Playmate of the Year at one point, and all that stuff. And then had a checkered, interesting, colorful history as she got older. And no, it was all undone. But the question is, if it wasn't her, then who was it? Well, here's the thing. When we talk about who was human Isis, when we talk about who was this guy, it's funny. I think our 2023 is showing. I think it's doing that at least with the people young enough who weren't alive at the time, because here's the deal. We're a little spoiled because first we had Bijo Trimble doing her concordance, showed the way how that should be done. And yeah, it started with Dorothy Jane's height. Okay. Then Bijo did the lion's share. And then Bijo's especially the 90s update that she did. And a lot of people don't, they think it ended with the wheel. There's the fan version and the wheel edition. And no, I'm not going to pull them out. But she updated in the 90s and had a slew more information. For one thing, she has a very hysterical foreign translations of episodes, which are really funny. The Japanese, the German, you know. But she had a ton more information on stand-ins and unnamed, uncredited extras. Now, here is the thing. Watching people talk about our friend here that people are trying to identify, this African-American extra, you know, and if it's not on Memory Alpha, here's the thing. Memory Alpha, of course, scoops up, repurposes, just like companion stuff. No, they collate everything and get it in the entries, fine. And they have tons of lists of unknowns, unmentions. And they always say, so-and-so was hired as a background extra and received no credit for this role. Well, of course, everybody, I think the least savvy TV person gets what an extra in the background is. But because they were so front and center in shows like Star Trek, where they were crew, recurring crew, the smart producers then, just as the smart producers now, just as the producers of Chuck had the nerd herd and the Buy More store employees all as a regular pool of extras. Chuck was the best thing after Enterprise ended. Half of Star Trek worked on it, by the way. I'm exaggerating. But if you're a conscientious producer and you have the capacity to have, like the West Wing, the office help in the West Wing offices, that were just background extras, all kinds of series that if it's a series and it makes sense to do that, they go to that trouble to have a pool of regulars that people get this, even if they never talk, even if there's not a story about them, you subtextually feel like you're in a real place because the real people are still there. And you never know, one of them might get a line. One of them might get a line and get a credit if in the finale or the final season. But that's not the norm. And there are times when, whether you're in the moment and you're watching in the 60s, or whether it's 50 years later and you're a young fan who's just coming to it, and you see something, and maybe you see a striking vision of lines or not, and you see our friend here, and you say, oh, I wonder who that is. And you've bumbled around Memory Alpha long enough to know there's a million extras who we now have their names recorded, right? It's really easy to think that you're not realizing, if you're new to the franchise, you're not realizing that, well, Bijo in LA went through records, got a ton of names, gave them to us in the 90s, and baby Memory Alpha and all its contributors very early on scoured through everything that was in print officially and plopped it in there to collate it. And a lot of that work that she did, amazing stuff. Who are the extras in Journey to Babel? Some of that is still not out. That's there. And then in the last 20 years, the rise of digital wikiing, of which Memory Alpha did it on paper first, as Bijo's concordance, as my concordances. It was all on paper. Mike did the encyclopedia using our stuff and then building from there from someone inside. And then all that just converting digitally. And now we've had 20 years of not just fans, but people running the shows who just go to Memory Alpha. And that's cool. We live in a digital age. But there's an assumption, and can I even say maybe a naive arrogance, that it's all there. And watching this weekend, people kind of be gobsmacked that somehow 50 years later, 60 years later nearly, we don't know some of these people. There's a lot of extras. There's a lot of people on crews. There are a lot of people that worked at vendors and built models, performed effects. There are a lot of names, much less pictures to go with the names, headshots, that we still don't know. So sorry, there are situations like that from the Berman era. They're next generation. We still have holes. Now, look, as the years went by, call sheets got a little more informative, and the regular crowd especially would get in. A lot of times the regular crowd of extras would double as stand-ins. And if they were kind of the body shape, not physical doubles, but if they were kind of the physical shape and they were dependable and they'd been around a while, they might get a uniform and be on camera. And they're probably wearing the same division color as the person they stand in for. Not always, but a lot of the times. And so they're then, of course, stand-ins are there to set lights and do blocking when they don't need the A team, as they would say. Be A team, first team, and then B team, second team. That's a whole thing. And that's what we get into. And I've had so many stand-ins and extras be guests on Portal 47, which is an awesome part of why we do. Because if they're there for years and years and years, they have all the great background stories and insights, and they work with not just actors, but also a lot of the crew. That's why they're a wonderful asset. So there is so much to knowing extras and stand-ins and / stand-in extras. There's so much worth and value in getting them recorded, getting them in the history books, beyond just having their name. Because here's the thing, our gentleman here from the 60s, I'm not going to doubt that he's long passed. But did he have kids? Did he have offspring? Did he leave memories and or mementos to his progeny? To anybody, to friends? We can't start tracking that until we know. Now, thankfully and amazingly, when we found April Tatro, who was the human Isis, she lived 2 miles away from the Roddenberry offices and was in wonderful shape and still taught Pilates. She was a contortionist back in the day and did extras work and did some lines and popped up on everything from Laugh In to Johnny Carson, but was still with us to be a guest. And that's one of the most legendary moments of anything I've done, much less on the Trek Files. But yes, our younger fans and maybe people not thinking how this goes, they're just kind of shocked that we don't have complete records. Why do we not have complete records? Because extras were on the bottom of the totem pole. They didn't get credit. They're not on screen. The further down you are on the pecking order, on the totem pole, the less paperwork there is for you. That includes, in the old days, and even for half of the modern era, not even being on the call sheet, or maybe being a last name, maybe being an initial last name. That's why you'll see that. At least there's that maybe Memory Alpha can grab onto. I have my call sheet collection over here from all the Berman shows. I'm working on the original series movies and episodes. I've got maybe a third of them. But nobody wrote extras' names on 60s call sheets, at least on Star Trek. But there is a record. Central casting, extras casting, and back when there was an extras guild, a SEG, not SAG, there was a Screen Extras Guild, and famously, you may know this, for the famous rec deck scene in the motion picture, when the promises to so many fans and friends of the show and friends of Roddenberry's couldn't be included in that homage scene on the rec deck because the Screen Extras Guild threw a little bit of a fit and said, hey, you're taking jobs away from our members. So they had to come up with a compromise and a quota to only have so many people be the fans, be the thank yous, be the wives and spouses and nieces and nephews. All the people that knew somebody. It was a cool thing. And yeah, we know so many folks are in there. We don't know all of them. And a lot of the bodies that we don't know are people who were in the Screen Extras Guild, and we need to find that paperwork. But here is the deal. It's not a magic moment. It's not a Harry Potter. It's not a abracadabra thing to find those people. Because sadly, after all this time, and here's the bitter truth, the sad truth, the unglamorous truth about finding April Tatro. Nobody else has this paperwork. Nobody else has kept paper. Nobody at Central Casting or whoever the casting office was that sent one-off extras especially. Now, the extras who are around for a long time, right? Like Bill Blackburn. You go up and down the folks who were extras because they were stand-ins. If they were regular extras and they were around, they have a legacy. They were a stunt guy, stunt woman. If they were around the show for a long time, the more they're around, the odds are that they had mementos, or the odds are that sometime in the last 50 years, they went to a convention. They might have even had a signing agent. My friend Scott Day now is looking to find a lot of these folks and get them to signing shows like the Hollywood show, if not Vegas. But not everybody is that way. Some folks have passed already. Some folks, like April had no clue that she was lost. She knew. Her friends knew her legacy, including being on Star Trek once. She was gobsmacked that we all considered her lost when we found her. But what did it hinge on? The paper. The paper. What am I trying to say here? Just paper. You know, if Samuel T. Cogley can have books, then I'm going to say paper, my boy, paper. And that's all it took. One day, as we were working on the Trek files, and I realized that some episodes had the little tissue paper carbons of the extras list, I said, we should check that for Assignment Earth. Because who was the number one unknown extra? Even though she was a featured extra, had to bring her own costume, even though she stands out, not like one of 17 crew in the background, that's no lines is no lines. She got paid a little more because she had to bring her own costume in. Those sheets have the day rates too. They're amazing. And you can find that in our whatever episode of the Trek Files that is. I'll flash it here. But an extra is an extra, right? A background atmosphere performer is just that. They got paid, they signed in, they signed out, they went home. No residuals, that's the whole point. No residuals, no nothing, except they can go and, oh, look there. And maybe if they made a splash, maybe if they worked well, they get to know enough casting people, they get to know enough assistant directors who keep that pool going. They get to know them. And so next time they need somebody, they can give a different look. They have a lot of clothing. They call them in. You're working on your own. They're not casting so much. At the beginning of a series, maybe. At the beginning of a season, yeah. But in the day-to-day of a long 26-episode season, You rely on those relationships like so much else and get called in. This fellow was in 3 Star Treks. Maybe he moved. Maybe, and it was Star Trek trying to show a diversity in the 60s there, and its limited little ability, what it could do, and getting a black faces on screen. Of course, there were a little more exotic roles, but then again, he had one where he was just a normal crewman too. So good on Bob Justman, good on the team. But no, it's not so much racist because there's lots of white background extras that we have no idea who they are because they were extras. And in the intervening years, they or their kids didn't chime into Memory Alpha and say, hey, track down somebody and say, hey, my dad, my mom was this person. Here's a name. And people, and the the anal completists of Memory Alpha, bless their heart. I have a bit of that in me too. We're happy to scribble it in there. So what happened this weekend? Everybody somehow, I swear to God, I got at least 5 or 6 different inquiries from people saying, Larry, do you know who this is? And that's why. That's why he fell through the cracks. Now, maybe not, though. Maybe his name, like April Tatro, is sitting on a piece of paper in the archives in the Roddenberry offices. Maybe not. Not every episode was blessed to have those things survive. It's a crapshoot now. And next week, I'm going to try to get by and see if I can help solve this mystery. The same way we did with April without all that advance notice. What I'd like to do, and I know Memory Alpha has them listed, unknown performers. It would be great to sit down, figure that out, look at their scene, go to the script, get the scene number, make sure we're talking about the right person, because they're listed out by females and males at least. And then by scenes. And sometimes we have to do deduction. But to at least start on that, that'd be a project to go through and see how many of those we could have. Because I'm sure at the very end of it, we won't have extras for everybody. We won't have those extra casting sheets for everyone, and especially in the 3rd season. Budgets were being cut. Things weren't as thorough, and there just weren't as many extras for a lot of the episodes if they didn't need them. Who are those people overpopulating? Yeah, that kind of thing. But that's the secret. That was going to be my theme for today. And then what happens, lo and behold, not on the people side, but on the physical media side. I wake up today to find the shocking news that are you aware of this? Gene Roddenberry's long lost, thought stolen, the 3-foot original Richard Dayton sample Enterprise model, the one that he brings out to Gene on the set of The Cage at the Rigel Fortress down at 40 Acres, Desilu Culver, when they're shooting the Pike fighting scenes right at the Rigel Fortress with Vina. And there's pictures of Gene looking at it. Richard Dayton had just turned the small model out before they started working on the big one and spending all this money on a silly sci-fi pilot. Oh my God. How much are you going to spend on this before we cancel it? We don't pick it up. Thankfully, it was picked up, and thankfully, we're all here today. But that model sat with Gene for ages, well into the 70s, well into the beginnings of the motion picture. It was on his desk in his office, wherever his office was. It's in pictures, and somewhere along the way, it was loaned out. So the story goes, after he passed, under Magel's care, and it did not return. All the usual suspects were asked and quite honestly said, don't know. What is amazing, it's one of those mysteries. It's one of those mysteries like April Tatro, like who was human Isis, that whether it was a mystery, at least we know this is a mystery. For 10, 15 years, we didn't think there was a mystery about human Isis. It was Victoria Vetri. But this is a mystery that's been well known and well wondered about. And lo and behold, last night, hey, the model side of the tech head side, right, blows up because this is a photo that's in, of all things, an eBay sales entry. An auction is starting off, asking price $1,000 plus postage. Close-ups of the 3-foot model. What's happened here? Look at this. What's happened is the seller bought one of those empty, like unclaimed storage units. And he cleaned it out, found the model. It's still on the stand that you see in Gene's. It's obviously the same thing. It's been aged. It's got aging, sadly. It's sat in a storage unit for ages. And the story is, this is still a breaking story at news time because it just broke this morning or last night. It popped up last night. Now, the sale has been taken down, the auction, and the buyer or the seller, the buyer of the storage unit, this is one for Storage Wars. My God, the buyer of the storage unit is talking to Rod and Trevor, talking to the Roddenberry estate about what to do about this because he bought, But here's the mystery: it's like, do we know the facts yet about who owned the storage locker? Do we have the trail? It's the provenance is unmistakable, but what is the trail for this? And it's amazing because I'd already started to talk a little bit about why things aren't automatic. Why do we not automatically know that guy's name? And here's the thing. Why do we not automatically know what happened to the kids? It's history. It's the passing years. And just because everything is so freaking digital now and we take shots of everything, we take videos of everybody, everything, wasn't always the case. We have so much digital footprinting going on. It wasn't always the case. We had paper, and sometimes paper would be thrown. This is why I saved in my power when I got keys to a little car and a bigger car. When I got to LA, even before I got to LA, I was asking people threw call sheets away. People threw all kinds of things away because it was over. The publicity departments, when a series ended, publicity at Paramount threw the slides away. The licensing department's set were intact. Well, they had been beaten up too over the years. We did not get down in time to save the DS9 slide collection from publicity because DS9 was a dead show now. So what do we need these for? We won't be dealing with reporters and that's that mindset about promoting versus archiving. It still is a factor. A lot of times people's decisions on a here and now show that's active, everything is driven by promoting it now. And that's cool. That's when your interest aligns. Eventually the show is gone and the here and now promoters don't care anymore. What happens is the care passes to the provenance of those who are dealing with the legacy, the archival. And sometimes that's another wing of the corporation, right? That's archives, that's licensing, marketing, because you're going to have product come from these greatest hits. It's still valuable to them. It's still even a revenue maker. And of course, anybody involved in now digital, online, websites, marketing, that's all worth having an archive, as it was back in the 90s when I came to it. Same way with the paper days. Who cared about these extras on a show 50 years ago? I'm sure Central Casting cleaned out those files long ago. That is why, if we're going to find these names, there's basically only one place to go. It's who was the only one who still cared and had stability. Here's the thing. Lots of people care, but eventually there's a flood. There's a fire, or maybe businesses go out of business. Family businesses have no heirs. The next generation doesn't care about the family business and they throw everything out. How many restaurants have I seen close around me here right now in greater LA because the kids didn't care about inheriting the beloved parents' restaurant? Beloved by the fans, not so much by the family. In this case, we are lucky in that Star Trek was a thing early. Gene and Majel kept everything, and Rod has been smart enough to keep it going. It helps having revenue makers to help provide that. But in other words, we've got a perfect storm to the good. And so normally this kind of record keeping would be lost. Normally, maybe one producer of a series would keep a lot of paper, and sometimes the kid might donate it to a library. There's all kinds of ways these things play out. But look, guys, they say history is written by the victors. History is also written by the careful. And in this case, we carefully are blessed to have a lot of records we might not otherwise have. History was not written by the careful in the case of the 3-footer. somebody who took it, stuck it away, and probably knew, I'm guessing, knew that if they put it out on their coffee table, people would eventually ask questions, especially if they had another fan in their house. See, this is the great thing about stealing paintings from the Louvre. Where are you going to show it? Are you such a billionaire? Whether you got it in an auction, or you had ways, are you such a type that wants to get it? And are you a golem with your ring and you can't show anybody else and you just sit and stare at your precious until you're gone? Or you're ashamed then and you can't admit that you've got it, and so you stick it in your storage locker and you just leave it for the poor schmuck that comes in to buy your unclaimed goods. And lo and behold, there's the 3-foot Enterprise from 1964, the first Enterprise. But this is why what I do and what so many people do is so fascinating. When Enterprise was canceled in 2005, and until everything blew up at the magazine and Decipher Inc. at Communicator, I had a conversation with at least 2 crew people. Everybody was a little depressed because not only was Enterprise coming to an end, but 18 years of modern Star Trek was coming to an end, and there was no future in sight. And it was a year before the JJ deal for the movies was announced. And I remember someone looking at me and saying, "Oh, what about the magazine, the fan club? Does this affect you?" And I said, "Oh, no. We have tons of stories to tell. We're not tied to a current show." And I remember they were a little like, "What? What does that look like?" And look, for the 12 years of the fallow years, it was the licensees. It was books. It was StarTrek.com, as long as we were allowed to, until we were shut down. It was those people keeping the flame alive, as well as all the fans, increasingly cosplaying and fan filming and CGI modeling. And as all of those things rose up to fill the vacuum, until we had Fresh Trek again. And in between the movies, even as they were the Kelvin movies, even as they were a great magnet for new fans, in a lot of ways unsatisfying to old fans, at least it was something. Until we had regular production again, and suddenly so much to know and learn and meet and memorize and mock and model. But yeah, in between those times, and still to this day, Star Trek history, Star Trek archives is still a thing. The story is not finished at all yet. We're going to find our Black Drill Thrall. And we're going to find the story now, hopefully, of what happened to the 3-foot Enterprise. And one day, I hope to finally find who at, apparently, Film Effects of Hollywood, Frank Vanderveer, who did the visual effects for Space Seed. I know it was just in Greg Jean's auction. But just because the original Botany Bay model from 1967 is a known thing, and we know the company that built it, still don't know the exact person who did. That's just a wacky little thing of mine. There are still long lists of extras from all eras of Star Trek. There are still long lists of little nook and cranny questions that we don't know, that no one's bothered to ask. Some of them are big, high-profile ones. And so when we get to solve who was human Isis, it's a big thing. That was the best and the biggest headlines that the Trek Files ever got out in mainstream press, much less mainstream fan press. So hopefully we'll find this guy. Hopefully we'll find the story of the Enterprise. But never, ever, ever assume, don't assume anything anyway, but never assume that just because it's old, it's known. Especially when it comes to Star Trek. There are so many Star Trek questions that we still don't know. The answers to questions we don't know. And as long as that's out there, and as long as there's new Star Trek cranking to be made, where we're going to be dependent on low down the totem pole records being kept. And this is why I preach. I just did it through the strikes to all the writers. Save your memos. They're digital now. They're not even paper. Does that make them easier to keep or easier to erase? Save your stuff. Save your receipts. Because next year, someone is going to be wondering about this. And the longer it goes as a mystery, the bigger the mystery becomes. We finally tracked down the Galileo 7 through its various owners and good intentions and restored it. And then that pendulum swung back to where it went from the prize of the Houston Space Center to the new philosophy, it's not real, stick it down in the diner and then stick it in a warehouse. And now, thankfully, James Colley's got it up at Star Trek Tours on display in a home that appreciates it. But gang, pendulum swing, that goes for the value and the worth of record keeping and records. And hopefully, at least out of the gate, those kinds of things were hung on to. Sometimes it just takes a while. Like April, like our lovely, handsome drill thrall, sir, like what happened to the 3-foot Enterprise? It's just amazing. It's just amazing to me how we get into that. Kids, history can be written by the victors, but history is also written by the careful. When after we let the dust settle from lower decks and oh, what a season, oh, what a time, when that happens, what will we be talking about? Well, one thing I hope you're talking about is if you're traveling for the holidays, you come in and think about taking a Trekland Treks with me. We'll go to 4 sites that you pick out in the day with a quick lunch, with me being your driver, your guide, your cosplay wrangler, your prop holder, your photographer, whatever you do, but we plan it ahead of time. You've got my expertise. We'll get around LA without the traffic headaches. We'll plan everything, weekend, weekday, whatever it is. And we will eliminate the surprises so you can enjoy your own customized away team, away mission. That's coming up. We have great weather in LA, in case you didn't know. It's a wonderful thing to start thinking about planning over the holidays if you're headed this way or into the spring. Because apparently we're going to be without Trek for just a little while. Yeah. Also, if you have not done so, I would encourage everybody to go over and check out the open house page at LarryNemecek.com. Again, that is, what's that number again? That number is LarryNemecek.com/openhouse23. There you go. Nick Meyer is our guest. We just announced that today. That's awesome. And of course, as always, I want to thank these folks for helping us bring Trekland Tuesdays live and everything Trekland online to you. Our TTL Club, our Patreons. Hey, and again, that's Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Glenda Bruton, Chris Jiggins? Really, Larry? Chris Jiggins, Pranakasha Productions, Comedy Forecast, and Andrew Jasemski, and our live wires, our second tier folk, Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Halbian Gunjansson, Alan Hoenzi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, and Casey Shafsky. Thank you all, one and all, for that. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I have a simple Patreon, patreon.com/TreklandLive, a $5, a $10 level. You can jump in, get a shout out, and at the $10 level, get access to the first few years of behind the scenes folks who are my Portal 47 guests. Up until now, only the Portales of those years have seen. It's kind of cool. Please do that. I think if everything I'm talking about today is intriguing, this is my jam, as the kids say, as the kids said 20 years ago. This is my jam. This is what I love doing. Aside from talking about the shows now, tracking some of this. It is kind of a mystery detective game. And at times, all of this overlaps. One of the shows, like Trek Files, is good for hunting this down. What we do in Portal 47, sometimes in an interview, something just pops out and like, oh my God, I'd never heard that before. Or we get a photo, personal photos from folks. That's why I love our Portal 47 guests that way. And no, you won't find it on YouTube. It's a paid membership, and that's part of the value. After the years go by, yeah, but not in the beginning. Meanwhile, the Trek Files, the home of the revelation of April Tedrow as Human Isis, and so many other great guests looking at aspects from right out of the Roddenberry Files, our real Trek Files, with a professional or family guest. We're coming back from hiatus next week. We're back. What is that? November 7th. Yes. November 7th, we'll be back for our 7th. Larry, we'll be back for our 11th season on November 7th. The all seasons are all still there. Podcast.roddenberry.com is where you can get all the Roddenberry podcasts. We're on Facebook with the documents. You can get it wherever fine podcasts are caught. But that's it. I hope you're all looking forward to our season debut with the great David Gerald. Will be our season premiere guest. And we're going to get into some arenas that, unless you're in a one-to-one conversation with David, he doesn't talk about. But the years have proved gentle, and we're going to dive into some aspects of David's career. You could read the Tribbles book. It's out there, but I think Tribbles will come up at some point. Anyway, the Trek Files is back next week. We're going to kick off season 11. David Gerald's our premier host, and you want to make sure and get that, right? The Trek Files on Facebook is where you can get everything, or wherever you get your podcast. Hey, gang, look, if you are watching us on YouTube later, this is the end of the show. I'm so glad you were with us watching now. But hey, it would be great if you could join us live, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, nominally 8 p.m. No, 9 p.m. UK time, 10 o'clock Central Europe. And we are global. We've got Aussies, we've had Africans, we've had folks in Asia. So it would be wonderful if you could join us live. You can get in on this lovely chat community firsthand. If you're watching us later, though, please leave a comment. It's never too late to have a conversation. We always do. And I am here. I will come back in and jump in with you if you want to. Or even if you don't. Meanwhile, otherwise, I am still hanging out on X Twitter at Larry Nemecek. That's also, though, YouTube. YouTube is where you really want to like and subscribe. And please share the channel around, would you please? Also Facebook and, yeah, Instagram too. And Portal 47. You're going to be hearing a lot about Portal 47 again as we get closer to the open house. But you can check it out now. Jump in if you want to now. Portal47.net. Once again, the open house is going to be free to the public. All you have to do is register for door prizes and for giving questions and to get the link. All right? The link will come along closer in, just so you know. That's going to do it for now. Please, everybody. I've talked to at least 4 or 5 folks that have COVID. Now, they've got COVID with their shots, with their vaccinations, but it's winter. The flu season is out there. Everybody just try to be smart about things, okay? Do all the things. And most of all, stay woke. There is so much. We've got so many global issues with the Mideast now. There's good and there's bad. Nobody is a universal saint or angel or devil. There's a lot of murky gray, but there are a lot of people trying to simplify things into black and white. So this is once again why I say check the sources. A lot of professionals are being fooled. Journalists, storytellers. So the people who are supposed to be transferring the history. So it comes full circle with Star Trek. Would you please stay woke? Check the sources. And trek well, everybody.